The current new unused echo set in the game, Law of Harmony, has me wondering, are echo skills going to be the new future of Wuthering Waves' meta? Let's talk about it. My name is Juice, and let's get into it. Okay, so, the last time that this happened, I was wondering if negative statuses were going to be the future, and while they're not appearing on every single new character release, I would say that they weren't handled the best. Aside from Phoebe, who in my opinion was definitely handled quite well, the other negative status characters leave a little bit to be desired, if not a lot to be desired. However, echo skills are a brand new subset of characters, and we only really have Furlova who uses them at the minute, but it seems like that's not a gimmick that's only going to be important for her, because the brand new Law of Harmony set that basically nobody uses as of now provides echo skill damage to the entire team, while also providing the wearer heavy attack damage bonus. So, with that in mind, it has me wondering, are they going to be making more echo skill-based characters? To be honest, I actually see this as quite plausible, because think about it, echoes are a very core integral part of Wuthering Waves. They've always been around in some way, shape, or form, through storylines, through gameplay, through putting them on your characters, whatever it may be, echoes have always been relevant, so to make them a more active part of gameplay isn't necessarily a bad feature. Obviously, we'll see how accessible it ends up being. That's the real concern here. Is it going to be reasonably accessible to the average player, or are you going to have to pull multiple 5 stars in order to get one echo-based team core functioning? That's what we have to wait and see, to evaluate whether if they do go in this direction, is it a truly good direction. But with that being said, because Law of Harmony doesn't have any current users, that leads me to believe that one of the 2.7 units is likely to use it. Now, here's the thing. I would assume that Galbrena is going to be a DPS because she was the first dripped character out of both herself and Qiuyuan, and typically speaking, the first release in a patch whenever there are 2 new releases is always a DPS. Go back through the Wuthering Waves patch history, you'll realize that, aside from 2.2, that is typically correct. Even so, I believe that's correct even in the 1.x era. Even the first ever banner we got, Qiuyuan and Yinlin, that still followed this same structure. So if they're putting Galbrena in the first half, I would assume that the quote-unquote support of this patch is going to be Qiuyuan. Obviously, he could do more than that, and we don't know if that's going to be the case, because here's the thing, Kuro Games is quite unpredictable. I mean, we see it all the time whenever they decide attributes for a character. I feel like Qiuyuan is the first time in forever where they gave a character accurate attributes with arrow and sword. Like, that's what we expected, but usually Kuro doesn't follow that. Usually they'll look at somebody holding a sword and be like, yes, this is a gauntlets user, obviously. So, Kuro can be a little silly, and maybe we do just get 2 main DPSs. In fact, that'd be better for me because I really like Qiuyuan and I intend to main him. But either way, if he is the support, I assume he's probably going to be the Law of Harmony user. If not him, then it could be Galbrena. Either way, I can see that they're going in this direction, because why would they add this set if there wasn't an imminent user to use it soon? It's normal for Kuro to add sets ahead of time, they've literally always done this. We had Eternal Radiance before we had Phoebe, and that set was basically useless on Spectra Rover before we actually got some competent Spectrofrazzle-based characters. And shoot, even if you take a look at the 2.0 launch patch, you would know this if you were here for it actually. We got plenty of new sets in the game, many of which had no users. In fact, the 4-cost Lorelei Echo didn't have a proper user for a good couple of months. And there's also the Fenrico 4-cost, which I forgot about previously, that also needs a new user. And because no characters in the game currently use them, it's very likely that the upcoming 2.7 units are going to use them. Now, which one of them? We don't know that yet. There's basically nothing official that confirms anything at the moment. They do leave crumbs with the Echo sets. They at least let us put 2 and 2 together, but otherwise we just kind of have to guess and hope we're right later on. But either way, if they do this, it's interesting to me, because we already have Furlova, and back whenever this mechanic was first introduced, I assumed that it was basically just for her, because her specific storyline and her kit and her abilities, it all kind of ties together. She's a conductor, she can conduct echoes, she can control their minds and stuff, so her being able to use them in combat, yeah, that makes sense. It's really cool that she can use Heka and stuff. However, I would actually be wrong in saying that she was the first ever character to have any sort of interaction with echoes, because Cantarella does too. She regains more concerto energy whenever echo skills are used. I suppose the reason I wrote that off at first is because she was made for Furlova specifically. I didn't really think that they were going to explore this mechanic beyond her. I thought it was a similar situation to Qiuyuan having the damage amplification, but it's only for Augusta, because she's the only character that's able to proc shields consistently. and avail of his specific quality. Obviously, Qiuyuan herself can also take advantage of his damage amplification, which is relevant when you consider that she herself is able to do damage. However, at the end of the day, my assumptions remain the same. I just assumed that echo skills were a specific mechanic that were introduced for Furlova, and that was pretty much the end of it. I didn't think we'd be seeing more of it, which was a bit silly of me to be honest. I feel like it's kind of a no-brainer to continue adding characters like this. Literally off-field summons. That is a valid playstyle that Kuro can get very creative with, and I would say that Furlova definitely has one of the most unique playstyles in the game. No other character really plays like her, and I find that very interesting. So obviously they're going to continue experimenting with characters in this way. I don't see why they would stop. Especially when you consider how relevant echoes are. And that's the key thing, I'm just hitting myself on the head for not realizing this. Echoes are so relevant to Wuthering Waves. They're literally a core mechanic. Obviously they're going to try and play into that a little bit more and find more unique ways for you to be able to abuse your echoes and whatnot. So, with that being said, I do think that they're going to continue making these characters. Now, I don't think that they're all going to come in a row, as much as I think it's just going to be a mechanic that pops up sometimes. It did feel like Kuro was pushing quite a lot of negative statuses in a row there, but actually not particularly. They were from 2.3 to 4, I'll give you that, but for a bunch of patches in a row, they didn't actually do what I was expecting. What I'm personally used to is that whenever a new gimmick is introduced, if they intend to make more characters with that specific gimmick, then they're going to release all those characters in a row, and they're going to make sure that you can collect them one after another, or just get whoever synergizes with whoever pretty quickly, right? But I wasn't actually expecting for Phoebe to come out in 2.1, then we had a break with Cantarella, who was actually the introduction to echo skills being a relevant thing in the future, and then we get back to negative statuses of Zani, and then Shikona, and then Cardothea. But after those three, we didn't really see any sign of any other negative status, which I found surprising. I thought that basically all 2.x units were going to be focused on this mechanic, specifically because there are so many different negative status types that we just don't have teams for yet. And I assumed that that was going to be their main thing. However, we got the complete Spectrophazzle team core, we got the complete Aero Erosion team core, and we just don't really have any teams for the rest of them. And I'm surprised about that. I thought they were just going to continue rolling those out over time, but no. Lupa ended up being a fantastic triple fusion support for Changli and Brandt, and just ended up being really good for Encore 2, and being a great fusion support in general. Then 2.5 had us see the introduction of echo skills being a much more relevant factor of the game. However, at the time, I didn't really think about it much, which I absolutely should have in hindsight. And then 2.6, okay, if you want to reach, sure, we have shielding mechanics, but I really don't want to give that too much credit, because I feel like the 2.6 units could have their shielding abilities completely removed, and they would still be totally fine. Just give Augusta a different inherent one, give her damage in some other way that actually meshes with her kit better, and then we're completely fine. I suppose the main concern with this happening is that it's going to create another niche type of playstyle that you're going to have to invest into quite a lot in order to get it hitting the ground running. I feel like previously you could take a support and they would end up working for a multitude of good characters. Back whenever Jinchi was still extremely relevant, she's still a good character obviously, but she's not top of the meta anymore. Jojo was a fantastic pull because she covered for both Jinchi and Carlotta, who was new at the time back in 2.0. And she was a really good support. She didn't really have anything specific in her kit. Neither did Jinchi or Carlotta. I mean, sure, Jinchi had coordinated attacks, but that was a very accessible thing that multiple different characters had, including Yuan Wu. I think the reason why these mechanics feel restrictive, so to speak, is because you need specific 5 stars in order to make them work. Strictly negative statuses here is what I'm talking about. I feel like these echo skills do have the ability to be much more versatile and much more player-friendly. I do think that can happen, especially considering that literally every character has an echo. The only way that I think they could horribly imbalance this is if they give one specific character the ability to trigger an infinite amount of echo skills per rotation or something silly like that, or just give them a really niche ability that works for a really specific character. Thankfully, in Augusta and Ayuno's case, while the damage amplification is definitely nice from Ayuno, I do feel like Augusta's still going to be fine with Mortefi. Obviously, Ayuno's still going to be the best in slot, but this definitely doesn't feel like a situation where you need to use a specific 5-star in order to make your Augusta feel like she's good and worth playing. The same cannot be said for every negative status DPS other than Phoebe, because whenever the Acolyte came out, she was designed in mind with not having another negative status support in order to help her, so she had to be made self-sufficient and work with Spectre Rover, a completely free-to-play character because everybody has them. However, there is one big saving grace here. Echoes are much more versatile than something like a negative status. those are locked to specific elements. Echoes are something that every character can trigger, and a lot of characters have access to. The thing is, as long as they make the niche big enough over time and we get more and more characters within that niche, say we get a couple of dedicated supports for that specific niche, not just a specific character in that niche, but the entire niche as a whole, it could work honestly. Because in that case, you're basically just investing into teams the same way that you would invest into any other team. I don't think having to invest into a team is inherently a bad thing, by the way. My issue is when you need to pull a really specific character that only works for one other character that you're trying to use. That does suck. However, whenever you're getting something like, say, how Qiuyuan is a heavy attack buffer on the whole, yeah, sure, she has the damage amplification thing, but she still acts as a general heavy attack buffer, then we're going in the right direction with echo skills. I'm interested, I think it is a cool idea, I just hope it's handled well if they decide to go in this direction for a long period of time, which I do think that they're gonna add more characters for it over time. Obviously, we don't know if the 2.7 units are going to use it. It did take a hot minute before Lorelei got any users, so we could be waiting and seeing them in the future, but I don't know. We'll just have to see. Hopefully this video is able to tell you whether echo skills are the future of Wuthering Waves is meta or not. This has been Juice, signing out. And sometime they gotta make a forecast of that dancing turtle and somehow incorporate him into a kit.